The bluebells are coming, oh ho, ho ho, the bluebells are coming, oh ho. The bluebells are coming, oh ho, ho ho, the bluebells are coming, oh ho. If you must sing, Percy, grumbled Douglas, can't you sing in tune? Anyway, our song's about Campbells, and mine's about bluebells. And it's daft. Bluebells are flowers. Flowers can't come, they grow. My song isn't daft. Percy was indignant. It is, then. I ken fine about bluebells. We've a song called the Bluebells of Scotland. But, said Percy triumphantly, the bluebells of England are different. They're engines. And one of them's coming with his controller. Didn't you listen, he went on severely, to the fat controller telling us all about it? I was away. Oh dear, I couldn't understand it all. But engines on the other railway aren't safe now. Their controllers are cruel. They don't like engines anymore. They put them on cold, damp sidings. And then, Percy nearly sobbed, they cut them up. You're right there, agreed Douglas. If I hadn't escaped, I'd have been cut up too. It's all because of yon diesels. They're all devils, he added fiercely. Fair play, Douglas, reminded Percy. Some are nice. Look at Rusty and Daisy. Maybe so, answered Douglas. But I'd never trust one myself. But what I cannot understand is all your blether about bluebells. Well, the bluebells are kind people who want to save engines. They've made a place in England called the Bluebell Railway. Engines can escape there and be safe. Like me winning away here. Yes, Percy went on, just like that. If they're old or ill, a fitter makes them well. They can have their own special colours, all the coal and water they need, and pull trains too. That's braw hearing, said Douglas with feeling. The fat controller says Stepney was the first engine to escape there, so he's asked him to visit us and bring his controller. But, objected Douglas, how about yon diesels? Mightn't they catch him on the way? We thought so too, said Percy. But the fat controller says there's no danger of that. Stepney's a match for any diesel. Besides, his controller will take care of him. He's a brave engine for all that, said Douglas admiringly. Fancy fighting his way through all those diesels just to see us. Look, squeaked Percy, the station's crowded. Silly, how can I look? Unless I be a corkscrew. Why do they all come? There's no train. But Percy was wrong. The signal dropped, and from far away an engine whistled. A gleam of yellow shone through the bridge girders. Here he comes, yelled Douglas. As with passengers and people waving and cheering, he puffed proudly through the junction on the last stage of his long journey. There he helped Duck shunt the yard. They were soon great friends and enjoyed their afternoon together. Thomas arrived before they'd finished and stayed till it was time for his last branch line train. But that train's tail lamps were hardly out of sight when the two engines heard a commotion at the station. The signalman was puzzled. Oh, a special, is it? Ah, I see. Thomas and his passengers grumbled at being delayed, but there was no help for it. Soon they heard an unfamiliar puffing. Express headlamps swayed and twinkled. Then Stepney whistled a greeting, then gathered speed into the night. Well, bust my boiler, said Thomas the tank engine. Shunted, fumed Thomas next morning. On my own branch too. It's a disgrace. I'm sorry, said Stepney. I was a special, he explained. Why? An important passenger came after you'd gone and ordered a special. Duck kindly let me take it. We had a splendid run. No record breaking, of course, but... well, Perhaps when you know the road as I do. Exactly, put in Stepney. You're such an expert. Thomas, flattered, forgot he was cross, and told Stepney all about his branch line. You are very lucky engines, said Stepney. Your branch has got everything. It's long enough to give you a good run, and you have plenty of passengers. Then you've a quarry, a mine, and some factories, so you need plenty of trucks. Trucks are fun, he went on wistfully. I miss them on our line. Percy looked surprised. You can take mine and welcome this morning, he said. So they asked permission, and then went off to collect them. Toby and Thomas gaped in wonderment. Stepney took his trucks to the harbour, picked up a load of empties and started back. On the way, they were stopped by a signal near a cricket field, where a match had just started. They settled down to watch. The batsman hit out, and soon a skyer towered towards the train. Clunk! Down went the signal. There was another clunk, too, as the ball fell on the train, but neither driver nor fireman heard it. "Stop!" yelled the fieldsman, but Stepney's noisy starting drowned their shouts. "Our one and only ball," they said sadly. 4 of them piled into an ancient car. "Wake up, Caroline," they said. Caroline coughed crossly, reluctantly came to life, and they rolled out onto the road. Stepney wasn't hurrying. He had just crossed the river when Caroline came up behind. "Toot, toot," she wailed. Road and rail ran side by side. The cricketers waved and shouted, but they were too far away for the fireman to recognise them, or hear clearly what they said. "If these jokers want a race," remarked the driver, "they can have one." He advanced his regulator, and Stepney drew ahead. Poor Caroline wasn't happy. She rattled along at twice her usual speed. "Master shouldn't treat me like this," she grumbled. "This pace is too hot for my system. It'll fuse all my circuits." "Hurrah!" she exclaimed. "That silly train has run into a hole, so we can't catch it. Now Master will have to be sensible and go home." But Master didn't go home. Caroline nearly boiled with fury when he made her climb a steep hill and run down to the station on the other side. Caroline arrived just as Stepney had shunted the trucks. His crew were going off duty. The cricketers explained what had happened. The driver and fireman were surprised. "Did you say the 3rd truck from the van?" they asked. They all went and looked. The ball was there, nestling under some straw. "Oh, we're very sorry," the driver said. "Never mind, you couldn't help it. Now we must get back quickly." "That's just it," said the driver. "You'll never be quick in Caroline. She looks worn out." "Wait a minute," he went on. "I've got a plan." The driver spoke to the station master and signalman. Then they rolled Caroline onto a flat truck and coupled a brake van behind. The cricketers got in, and Stepney pulled the train. The big diesel surveyed the shed. "Not bad," he said. "I've seen worse. At least you're all clean." The engines gaped. "It's not your fault," he went on. But you're all out of date. Your controller should scrap you. Get engines like me. A fill of oil, a touch on the starter, and I'm off, with no bother, no waiting. They have to fuss around you for hours before you're ready. At last the engines found their voices. An inspector had to come and stop the noise. They held an indignation meeting early next morning round the turntable. "Disgraceful," rumbled Gordon. "Disgusting," said James. "Despicable," spluttered Henry. "To say such things to us," burst out Donald and Douglas. "It's to teach him a lesson we'd be wanting." But their chance came sooner than expected. Diesel purred comfortably. He was being warmed up well before time. An inspector watched a fitter making adjustments. The wind tugged at the inspector's hat. "Look at me, Duck and Stepney," he purred. "Now I'll show you something." Diesel saw his coaches waiting at the platform. He rolled proudly towards them. He advanced a few yards. Then suddenly he coughed, faltered, choked, and stopped. The inspector, meanwhile, had seen nothing of this. He was looking for his hat. Diesel seethed with baffled fury as they pushed him back to the shed. "My hat!" exclaimed the inspector as the cavalcade went by. "Bother your hat," said the Fat Controller crossly. "The train's due out in 10 minutes, and you'll have to take it, Duck." Duck looked doubtful. But when Stepney asked, "Can I help him, sir?" he felt better. The Fat Controller was pleased, too. Both controllers were there to see them off. "Gordon will take over from halfway," said the Fat Controller. "So get the train there. Never mind about being late. Good luck." "Don't worry, sirs," smiled Stepney. "We'll get there, and be early, too." Moving carefully over the points, they reached the open line. "Now for a sprint," waffled Stepney. "I'm ready when you are," puffed Duck. Faster and faster they went, till their wheels were turning at such speed that the side rods were merely blurs. Under clear signals, they whizzed through Edward Station and charged at Gordon's Hill beyond. It was hard work. But once over the top, the last 10 miles were plain running, and they swept into the big station in fine style. "Hello," said Gordon. "You're early. That's one in the headlamp for old Diesel. Have you heard the latest?" he chuckled. "James says he's sick as boiler sludge and sulking in the shed. Out of date, are we? Ho, ho, ho!" And still laughing, Gordon puffed away. Everyone was sad next day when Stepney had to go. All the engines who could came to see him off. "Goodbye, Stepney. Come again. Goodbye, goodbye." But what about Diesel? He'd slipped away the night before. He said goodbye to no one. but left two things behind: the nasty smell of bad manners and a battered bowler hat.